Okay, my outstanding friends, it's Roger Spur. I started Mudfossil University to bring out the information that has been suppressed by academia, and it is how to identify rocks. Now, you're going to hear some very disturbing information now. And I have kids, and when they were very young, we used to joke around a lot. But every now and then I would say to them, listen to me carefully. This is my serious voice. And today is my serious voice. It has never been more serious than it will be today. I am calling for the resignation of Yale University's president for allowing plagiarism from Yale. I'll explain right now. Okay, so why would I call for the resignation of Yale's president? I have been sending emails over and over to him, President Savoy, I believe is his name, and Derek Briggs, who was the one I presented all my research to. And I feel it was plagiarized. And I'm going to show you exactly why. Because I dealt with Derek Briggs and his assistant Armand Morgan and everybody at Yale, because I kept sending emails because they wouldn't listen to me, so I figured I'd broadcast it loudly, and I did, and it made no difference. And this is the issue with academia now. It was the Ivy League. Well, now it's poison ivy. It is a place to be used as a source of income. And you must say what they tell you to say, or they will fail you in your life. So you have become an indentured servant, and you are, because they have used you as a source of income. Now you have all these bills to pay based on your trust in these institutions of extremely high education. I'm going to tell you right now, I have found that to be exactly the opposite. Exactly. And not just one, 100% of them. Not a single one. And I have been sending my information to all the people that are making claims about, I'm a geologist and I know all this stuff and we're an esteemed institution, Yale, Harvard, Johns Hopkins. I sent to all of them. All of them, 100, everybody, virtually everybody, NASA and all of them. And just no interest whatsoever. And I get responses like this. Let me just show you what I just got back. And I'm just fed up with it. It's never going to get anywhere because these people are in control and they will not give up the control. The only way to do it is get rid of the people. And President Savoy is one of them. And Yale's president just resigned. I guess Colgate, another one. They're all the same. Basically, they're all 100% the same. And they are disgraceful, basically. All right, I'm sorry. I said Yale's president just resigned. I meant to say Harvard's president just resigned just a day or two ago. And hopefully Yale will follow suit and resign, Dr. Savoy there. Okay, here's why I become concerned about the educational system. 100% of the academics and the experts that I have sent these to, geologists, anthropologists, paleontologists, all of them, they just either refuse to engage or they do like this guy here. This is somewhere in Florida, some place that claims they can identify any fossils and rocks and so forth. He says, unfortunately, the first link you sent does not work. I followed the second link to discussion regarding microfossil billions of years old. Well, that was my stuff. They're not billions of years old. Your photos show limestone of origin. These here, and I'll show you those in a second. Limestone often erode, which means dissolve, which I couldn't probably figure that out, and produce shapes that can be intriguingly lifelike. Well, yes, it can. One photo shows impression molds of marine invertebrates. No, it doesn't. It's new fossils that Yale even says there's nothing like them that live today. These are before the fossils they ever even knew about. My fossils. These are called exceptional preservation of soft tissues, and they are exceptionally preserved. Our collection are primarily much more geologically recent. I suggest you contact a museum that will be able to help you with further identification and discussion. Sincerely, Charles O'Connor. Well, Charles, I have a hard time understanding your ability to see what's in front of your face, my friend, because that, I can't see how you can say that weathered into that foot. Now, that's where the fibula would have sat. Right there is where the tibia rocks down. And now, this is just one of the pictures I sent them. Now, here's the other ones. All of those are different feet. These are all different feet. They all eroded like that. That's the bottom of the foot. And they almost look like they have a little wing nut holding them on. I'm telling you, these things were designed by somebody. And here's the one he says was a marine creatures. He's looking at these little things right here, which is springs. That's a spring, and it loads this spring, and that spring loads this spring. That right there is a heel. Right there is a heel. I know he probably dismissed this within 10 seconds. And no interest whatsoever to see what's in front of their faces. And he's just one of the whole crew of them. And Yale was absolutely the worst of them all. Because I kept over and over and over going after him. And, you know, Armand Morgan and I became good friends after a while. I thought we were kind of friends. And my last words to him, I said to Armand, by the time we're done with this, you guys are going to look like complete fools. And he said, well, we won't be the only ones. And I said, yeah, you're right about that, Armand. And that, I think, was our last words. Armand, I told you, buddy, it would come to this. Here it is, my friend. Okay, so why would I be so upset about this? Well, this is 11/30 of 2015, fascia-facilitated fossilization, which means these exceptional preservation of soft tissue creatures. I have dozens and dozens, hundreds of them, which I presented all this information to Yale. Of course, I sent them this paper. I sent them all the DNA tests, which I had done, the CAT scans, which I had done, the chemistry. I informed them on how the process worked, and it is from fascia. I was going to call it fascia-facilitated fossilization. I then changed it to mud fossils because the mud really is a preservative. The fascia just is where everything separates from the rest of the world. All right, the fascia coats every membrane. Well, fascia is a membrane basically, and it coats every organ. Here's a lung. Hold on. Oh, and this was DNA tested and CAT scanned. And any anatomist in the world that knows what a lung looks like, even a kid can see that's a lung. And this is the fabric on it, and it's just absolutely flawless. Exceptional preservation, yes, but it's on these fascia planes. The fascia created feldspar. And again, I told them all about this, how the phospholipids, which is phospho, boiled down to aluminum silicates, because this was a hot water flood. I know, it sounds crazy, but you have to look into the details. And having DNA and CAT scans and specimens and chemistry and understanding the process and being very, very articulate the way I presented it. Having this being dismissed, I see as someone who just doesn't want to do their job and is a fiduciary failure to their students. And then what's worse is after I put all this up, he took credit for it at Yale. A Yale-led team. I'll show you all this. Just stay with me because I want to see the president of Yale removed, and I want to see Derek Briggs removed, and Lydia Tarhan removed, and maybe just some more. Throw them all out at once. Now, I also discovered fascia-facilitated fossilization, which led me to understand fascia is a tubular, fluid-filled fabric network. All right, it covers the entire body, and I also could say about that, it's a giant system. Somewhere down here, I say it's a giant system for the. Hold on. All right, here it is right here. Again, 2015. This is a year before Yale put their paper out, and this was fascia facilitated fossilization. Again, this is the coating fascia. So your skin is fascia too. Even the feathers on this goose or waterfowl, duck, whatever it is fascia. You see the feathers, this feather pattern on the top there? All right, and they all died in a great flood, which was all written about in ancient history. Velikovsky did all the research on it. Now, that probably turned them off too, because that points to the Bible and religion. They hate that stuff. And again, it was from the flood. This side is flat. You see how it's flat? It would die lightly like that. And that's the neck. And you can see where the neck was. And there's the artery right there. And I've done tests, catalase tests, and it's just saturated with enzyme catalase. And that is you can see it if you hold it right. But this is called nucleophilic invasion and substitution. Again, totally, I just kept flooding them with all this information, and they just completely disregarded it. My last contact with Derek Briggs was, all you have is rocks. And that was after the DNA, the CAT scans, the chemistry, everything I did. Now, as far as I'm concerned, he just didn't want this information. That is considered to be academic fraud, when you will not allow information to be seen that is contrary to what you want. And basically that's what they want, is to continue this nonsense about the earth. And, and even the whole thing was, I had him against the wall with this. And I actually contacted NASA. And I said, I have evidence that the stuff on Mars is biological. Now, I don't remember whether I got a response from NASA or not. They might have just sent back something like, oh, thank you, and that's it. But apparently they contacted Yale because they paid for the funding of this study I will show you that took credit for my work. This was my research right here, and I talk about silicon, heavily infused with silicon, 50 times as much silicon. And Yale talked about that. They talked about everything. And they talked about these being creatures that no longer exist. And they call it possibly a failed evolutionary experiment. And that's exactly what it was. So let's see the paper that I claim plagiarized my paper. Now you can come up and look at this. It's on academia.edu. It's called Fascia Facilitated Fossilization, if you want to look at it closer. I have quite a few papers up there. I think I have like 45 papers up there. Because everything that I was reading about was wrong. So I had to put them up there just so that they're documented. And I wrote a book too at the same time frame. Now let's see what Yale did. Okay, so why do I claim plagiarism? Well, Derek Briggs is the person I worked with. And they claim, these are all people from Yale, and they claim that there was a Yale-led team that discovered these soft-bodied creatures. Now, this is all you have to do is read about the first couple of paragraphs here, or not even a paragraph. It says that they put a name on this layer, and it really is the Triassic layer. They just called it the Ediacara or Ediacarara era. So they say this era, the biota, which means soft-bodied creatures, Earth's earliest fossilized ecosystem. Okay, you could come up here and look at Yale's paper. They call it exceptional preservation of soft-bodied Ediacarara biota promoted by silica-rich oceans. Basically exactly what I sent to them. In my paper says exactly the same thing. Extreme amounts of silica, and because it was a worldwide flood, their oceans, because the whole world was covered with the ocean at that time because of the worldwide flood. And they say it was exactly those were the same words, basically. It says this was the earliest fossils that were ever considered to be fossils, and now they're exceptionally preserved because they transitioned due to nucleophilic substitution, which I understand fully, and they should, as a learning institution, they should fully understand that, but I don't know. It says they were exceptionally preserved soft bodies, exceptionally preserved, and they present it was due to rapid due to rapid early stage precipitation of silica cements. Yes, there was a worldwide flood, and all of these silica cements actually came out from the lower ocean. And the lower ocean floor is called a silica ooze. And that, because we almost got hit by Venus, it created enormous swellings of the ocean, and all of that basement layer came up and mixed and has extremely high silica contents. And that is what created all the extreme preservation, because silica is a biomineralizer. What that means is it comes in, attaches, and bonds and preserves biological tissue. It's a biomineralizer, turns them into minerals. Now, and they say it's facilitated by high silica saturation states of the oceans. And this is worldwide. It wasn't just one place or another. It's a complete layer, worldwide, everywhere on the world. All right, now let me show you the other article they have that makes it a little more simple for the average person, because this gets very, very complicated. But the thing that I found very interesting was that this was funded by NASA. You see down here? This is funded by NASA. NASA Expedition Grant. NASA Astrobiology Institute. And I sent all my information to NASA at the same time. All I can assume is NASA decided, well, maybe this guy's got something correct, and let's go to Yale and see what they say. And of course, I'm sure Yale told him the guy's a nutcase. I'm not involved in this whatsoever. And I gave all of this information to Derek Briggs. It was not like he didn't know about it whatsoever. They knew about it, and I forced it on him. And I forced it so... this became very, very contentious, extremely contentious. And now I'm sort of disgusted with the whole situation. And I did make a demand to Yale, to all of them there. I sent it to the president, to Briggs, to even Morgan, Armand Morgan, all of them, every one of them, Lydia Tarhand, all 9 yards. And of course, I haven't heard anything back. And I said, if this isn't solved by 1/1/2024, I am going to go public, and I'm going to call for your resignation. That's what I'm doing today. Okay, so what do we have here? This is Yale News, which they're touting their new discovery. And this, again, is a year after I presented them with my paper and I had presented them for years prior to this, but finally I made my final demands a year before this. Now, this is, I'll just read you this because it's not all that complicated. Earth's the earliest community of complex sea creatures lived in a warm, slimy, planetary petri dish. No, it didn't. It lived in a gigantic worldwide flood. Yet we likely wouldn't even know about it at all, scientists say, if not for a quirk in the chemistry of the ancient oceans. This is where the silica ooze came to the surface and mixed, because the silica is what preserved them. Well, the fascia is what separated the preservation process. The silica is what invaded and transitioned them. Now, a Yale-led research team, this is where I see, this is plagiarism and fraud, basically, found that this Edicara biota, which is a soft creatures, collection of marine fossils found sandstone around the world, the whole world, and they're found basically in the mud. They use sand to try to obscure my work. Now, the sandstone around the world. The sandstone is from the silicates. Silicates is SiO2, which is a sandstone, and quartz. Now, they found that they recorded the operation of an unusual mechanism that preserved impressions of creatures' soft bodies for hundreds of millions of years. That also is incorrect. This was very recent. Every one of my fossils was picked up off the surface of the Earth. The findings appear in the journal Geology, which should have looked into this to realize that I had already published about this. The Edicara biota, which is just a soft tissue creatures, takes its name from a fossil deposit in South Australia. Well, it should be the Middletown biota, because that's where it was first discovered. But fossils of this era, of this, are found worldwide, everywhere. worldwide. It's not just one place because the world was flooded, the entire world. Now they say it ranges from 541 to 580 million years ago. I say that's not true whatsoever. This is very recent. They're on the very surface of the earth. They're not buried. Well, a lot of them aren't buried. Some of them, it depends on where you are. If you're up on a mountainish area, and I'm up on a kind of a hillish area, everything would have eroded down as the flood subsided. So all the melted tissues, which is your soft tissue, which is your muscle and so forth, that would have run down and turned into mud. That's all it is. Your bloody tissues are mud. It's clay. So all that would have run away and then leave things just like this, laying flat as a pancake, flat as can be, because they just laid on the ocean floor, which the entire world was an ocean, until it all drained down into the valleys and so forth. And this was, again, Velikovsky did the research, and it was because we were almost impacted by a fiery comet, which it turned out to be Venus. And all of these were written in every culture on the face of the planet. He wrote a book called Worlds in Collision in 1950, and they destroyed his life. Now, he had it on the bestseller list, number one, for 11 weeks in a row, and they forced Macmillan, the publisher, to remove the book from the bookshelves because they didn't like what it said. And that's what we're up against with academia, and they never relented. Even though all of his predictions came true, virtually every one of them, and none of theirs did. Carl Sagan savaged him. And that's what you get is these big shots. They're very arrogant, and they're very self-centered. So whatever makes good outcome for them, doesn't matter what the outcome for the rest of the world is. It's all about them. The same thing with Yale. Same thing with all of these Ivy League. It seems to be poison ivy. Now they say they lived on the sea floor, which the whole world was a sea at that time, and they're from a few millimeters long to as big as 1 meter. Well, they're much, much bigger than that. And they lived on the sea floor, because the whole thing was a sea floor. Now listen to this. This is from Yale. Many of them are outright bizarre in appearance. Yes, they are. The ones that I showed them are bizarre, no question about it. They do not resemble any organism alive today, said the lead author, Lydia Tarhand, a postdoctoral fellow at Yale and first author of the study. And of course, I had given all of this to them long ago. Now, this is in quotations. We would like to understand the relationship to the complex animals that evolved shortly thereafter. They want to know what is the differences between these creatures that were before any fossils they ever even knew about. And I show that in my stuff. Here's the differences right here. No toes. That's a foot. That's a human foot. Basically, I think it's human. It sure looks it to me. However, the toes are built in. And we have literally dozens and dozens of these. And I have several different styles. And inside, there's springs instead of bones. They want to know about the relationship. Well, I would think they would want to talk to me. And I did present all this to them. I don't think they really do want to know about this. I think they want to get more funding so that they can get to understand all these things for the next 100 years or so. Now, she also says, are the Ediacara organisms, which is my stuff, some sort of failed evolutionary experiment? In other words, was the Earth experimenting with different types of creatures? And it was. Basically, they're correct. It says, or do they include the ancestors of animals subsequently in this time frame colonize the oceans? Well, it's the whole world. The whole world was an ocean at that one time when everything sloshed everywhere, and it lasted approximately 9 days, I guess, was the major flood portion. And then they started to recede, and then basically everything was wiped off the face of the planet at that time. So they're right. They preceded, and they're outright bizarre in their appearance. And they were very, very big. And these are the things I presented to Yale. That's what freaked them out. Because I showed you this here. Let me just show you something that freaked them out. But I'll show you in 1 second after we finish up with this. The big part of the answer involves figuring out how the fossils were able to form. And I have shown this, and I will again. Now listen to this. This is wrong. The animals themselves were entirely soft-bodied. That means they lived before the evolution of shells, teeth, or bones. That is completely wrong. And that's typically the only parts of organisms to become fossilized. That's now. This was in the flood, and the heavy, dense silicates and salt water and this long duration and coated in mud is what caused the preservation. And the preservation was because of hot water. And the hot water did this. It caused the phospholipids, which is phosphorus is up here, phospholipid bilipid membranes. All right, this is all made of phosphobilipid membranes. When it boiled these down, and the whole Earth boiled because it was almost hit by Venus, it combusted the whole skies, stirred up the oceans, really, and they say it stopped the Earth from rotating for a day or so. And I've been looking at this because some of the cultures say it stopped for 3 or 4 days, and then they had 3 or 4 days of brightness and 3 or 4 days of darkness. Now, and at first I said, well, one of them would say it was 24 hours of dark and 24 hours of light. Why were these different stories? The only reason is they were on different areas of the globe. If you're up high, and because the globe was twisted at this time, originally it should have been straight up and down. And we'll go through this too. As the globe is spinning, it got smacked. So now it's sitting on its side. It's still going around the sun like this. But if you're over here and it's spinning this way, it's going to take several days before, at certain latitudes, you know, how high you are up on the crest of the Earth, will take longer. So some of them would have darkness for 3 days and lightness for 3 days. Some of them would have darkness for 1 day and lightness for another day or 2 days or whatever it was. So that accounts for the different statements through these different cultures of why the Earth actually stopped rotating. It's in the Bible. And the Earth stood still. Yes. Its atmosphere was so whacked by Venus that it literally, and it got smacked backwards, and it did that for a day or two, and shaked all the water all over the whole world, and everybody drowned and died, except if you got way, 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 way up to the top of the mountains and inside of a cave. That's literally the only place you could have survived. Or in an ark. And all that stuff freaks them out. Now, they're saying that the researchers realized, which I told them, the oceans during the time were much richer in dissolved silica than they are today. Yes, because all the stuff came up from the bed. This enabled the transformation of loose sand, no, it's mud, around the animals to turn into rock over a matter of hours or years, rather than the usual time frame, thousands to millions of years. It could have happened almost instantly, basically, which is exactly what I told them. It says the Edakara organisms were rapidly buried by sand during underwater storm events. Yes, it was a storm event over the entire world because it was this global flood. This process of cementing the sand grains, known as the mud, around them must have happened rapidly. Yes, it did. It was a big whack. Because otherwise, by the time the carcasses rotted away, the sand bearing them would have dissolved and they would have left an empty carcass place. But no, these preserved 100% perfectly. And it was nucleophilic substitution. So Lydia, you should look into that. Now, they say the team conducted its research using detailed microscope-based techniques. That's exactly what I did. There's my detailed microscope right there. And I did a lot of microscopic work on this, and I found new things. I found the interstitium layer, which nobody even know about. Now listen to this. The paper, anyway, it says the team conducted its research using micron scale microscopy. Well, so did I. The paper was co-authored by Ashley Hood, who is Yale postdoctoral associate. Now we come to Derek Briggs, who is Yale's Evelyn Hutchins Professor of Geology and Geophysics and Curator of the Invertebrate Paleontology at the Yale Peabody Museum of Natural History. Now, I would think with all of that stuff attached to Mr. Briggs' name, he would want to understand something that has DNA certification, CAT scans, specimens, chemistry, the process all understood, 20 miles from his office. And they want to go to Australia to find something that's right down the street that is much more understood than whatever they're coming up with here. Now, who funded this? NASA. NASA funded this. Now, again, at this point in time, this is 2015, I found the information from the Curiosity mission, where they went to Mars, and it's saturated with life. It's the same kind of life as here on Earth, because it's just gigantic creatures, and I'll show you those in a minute. And I contacted NASA and JPL and all of them. I said, you're looking for life up there? It's all over the place. The only thing I can think of why they would get in touch, or how NASA would get involved in looking for sea creatures, is because they want to know, was Roger an idiot? And basically everybody called me an idiot because Yale wouldn't talk to me. It wasn't like, just like this other one that sent me the thing back saying, oh, those are just rocks and they eroded, which means dissolved in certain ways to look like feet. Oh man, I'll tell you, it is systemic, and it is broken badly. Okay, so what evidence did I submit to Yale? Well, I submitted DNA tests, and they were Homo sapien mitochondrial cytochrome B and D loop region, the 36-inch tip and the lung, and the other one too. I submitted 3 of them to them. Excellent quality DNA sequence was obtained from the 36-inch tip and for the lung sample. Now, the 36-inch tip was what freaked out everybody, and it freaked me out too, but I realized it was true. Now, this was from 2015. I had these tests done. I paid for them myself. They were not cheap, and they did a fabulous job, and this guy was attacked for doing this work, basically, and they were firing people for doing this work back then. Mary Schweitzer and Mark Armitage, they had their trials, as everybody did. Now, I was not in the business, so it wasn't for me. Nobody could fire me, but I was just destroyed and ignored and everything about that. But anyway, this is what I discovered. I don't know, I think I showed you in a previous my paper about the interstitium, which was this layer that covers all your organs and all this. And this is it right here. And I could see it in my Mudfossil, and I could see it in this very extreme detail, which they never saw it before. So until 2018, they never even knew it existed. It was my research that showed that yes, it was. And these creatures are absolutely enormous. So you can look at them. You don't need a microscope. You don't need any microscope at all. And these are the little balls that are inside the tissue right here. And these are all over the Earth, because the Earth, it was covered with biology. And my research shows this. Now, this is that 36-inch tip that I found, the fingertip. All right, that's a fingertip. All right, now let's take a little time. Don't rush yourself thinking about this. This is the problem. I say, oh, that's just a rock. Well, it is now. But let's follow what a fingernail looks like. It comes around. You see it here, coming out here, and right out here. That's the fingernail. All right, the tip of the finger is out here. This little pad here, that round circle, is like a little pad that bumps up against your next bone so that you rock on these soft tissue parts. This is the vein and the artery coming in to service that fingertip with blood. This piece that's cracked off here, I broke that off. And the reason I broke it off is because you can't get any blood from the surface of a fingertip. It's like coated with rubber, basically. It's like a rubber glove that's just natural. Think of it that way. And I'll show you, because when I knocked this off, the fingerprints came right with it. I'm not kidding you. So I broke this off to find out, well, to get the blood out of here. And it came out, it's just like red blood. Not wet, I don't think. I think it was dry, but it came out just like red blood. you know, dusty, and I had it sent off. Now, here's where the fingerprints are. Where are they? All right, here it is right here. This is what the piece I broke off. All right. This is a fingerprint ridge, the same as this. Same as one of these. And these little dots are the sweat pores. You see them up here, sweat pores? And you have them in your fingers too. That's why your fingertips get sweaty. Now, this is just like a rubber glove. Literally, it's like a rubber glove around. That's why they call it grip skin. Well, I do. Some people call it epidermis, and you know, they got all kinds of different names for friction skin. I call it grip skin because that's what you can grip with. That's the tough stuff. That's what you do your work with. Now, once you lift that off of here, which is all I did when I went whack, it just popped right off just like this. Almost identical to popping off just like that. There's a seam in between, and it just popped right off. And down inside, it's saturated with blood in fingertips. There's a ton of it, because those are the terminus for your vein and arteries. And it comes down the artery, and then it comes back up the vein. So that is a pretty good sized fingertip. Now that's 3 feet long. And don't forget, Lydia Tarhan said, there is nothing like them that existed today. They were completely bizarre. She's correct. The lungs, some of them, literally had blood still coming right out of them. That lung is this lung right here. This was DNA tested, and it was CAT scanned. But you can't really see much in the CAT scan because these things transition. You can't see much in the way of a separation of all the little bits and pieces. All right, there was literally blood coming out of them. This is the lung in the picture right there. That's this lung. And literally, blood was coming right out of them. All right, when they first come out of the ground, like this bone here, when they first come out of the ground, there's actually, the blood runs right out of them and turns into scabs. You see the blood right here? Now, look at this. This bone here was this one here. All right, they call it bone foramen, and there's a vein and an artery in there, connects up to wherever it goes to, and they come out of these little cavities. And you know, once it came out of the ground and it started to dry up, the blood just ran out and made a scab. So what I did was I pushed the scab off. Look, I pushed the scab off to the side. Where is it? Here it is. All right, and this right here is clotting fiber. All right, so it's a they call it fibrin, and it's a clotting fiber that separates the scab from inside to seal it back off again. Now, so once I remove that, where is it? Here it is. Once I remove the clotting fiber, we can see the holes. Now, you see this little red coming over here? That's the tube that would have led up to wherever it led to. And this one, the little black one here, you see it, that hole there? That's the vein. Vein is black, arteries are red. In mud fossils. In a human body, normally you'd call that blue, and that would be red. The red is the key. It never goes bad. I'm telling you, the red lasts literally forever. Now, they say everything was soft tissue. That's not correct. That's a bone, and this is the bone. Not only that, right there is still some bone. A lot of them have no bone left whatsoever. It's like Caesar here. He's got no bone left into him at all. But he did have bone. There was bone around his neck. And this was his artery. I have a picture of that too. So let's take a look at Caesar here. I call him Caesar Augustus, because I think he's a goose. Where's Caesar's neck? Here it is. All right, this is Caesar's neck. You see, that's the center of his neck. You see this blackish looking stuff? That's the flesh around here. And then you always have a coating of this dense keratinous fiber, which is the feldspar. All right, so here he is right here. That right there is an artery. You see it red? You can see it. I put in hydrogen peroxide in there, bubbles up like crazy. So this would have had bones in it. So this area right in here probably somewhere would have been where the bones are, in that colorish stuff. and then the blacker stuff around that is fleshy stuff, and then the outside is the membrane-ish stuff, and that's what turns into the feldspar, because all of the outside is coated with collagens, which are made out of aluminum silicate. Well, they're made out of phospholipids when they boil down into aluminum silicates. And I actually made some mud fossils. Here's one I made. It did, you know, I didn't go to any extremes. Here it is right here. It's just starting to take on, to become a solid, and I think I still have it around here somewhere. It's pretty damn solid now. Maybe I'll see if I can find it. Maybe I won't be able to find it. But anyway, this goes back 5 years ago, more than that. And as you can see, it's starting to turn into fossil or stone, basically. Eventually, that'll turn into stone. And this was only, I think it only took 3-4 months. And this up here will turn into, that's a tendon. It's a different material than the fleshy stuff. But this came out pretty cool. It didn't take long to do that. What didn't I show you? I had CAT scans done. Look at this. You want to see something really cool? Check this out. This right there is a vein. Not an artery, a vein. You see around the outside? You see around the outside? And I say it's a tubing of a vein. And you say, well, Roger, how would you know it's a vein and not an artery? And I would say, because veins have valves in them where blood can't go 2 different directions. That's a valve. That right there is a valve. And I believe these are all blood cells. I believe that these are actually the blood cells coming through here, and they're stuck there. Now there's a little tiny piece of red blood here. I don't know how that got there, but that is a valve, and they pinch off. So in other words, the blood could probably, I believe what it looks like to me is the blood could come this direction, but it could not go back. If it tried to go back, it seals up that valve. All right, but it can come through this way, through this crack, this way, going back, it can't go back. I believe that's what we have. There is a vein. You see this one right here? This is this rock. It's basically a piece of meat. Well, that's what it was, and it just turned solid as a rock. Solid as a rock. This little flap here is unknown to science. You see the little stripe across it? This thing latches this piece into another piece of meat, and I'll show you that. Nobody really understands this right now because it's never really been seen or understood. It's always been considered just a piece of the superficial fascia. Well, it is not. It's a special tag that seams in, and I have a lung here, a little bitty lung that shows it very, very clearly. This is a very small lung. That's the entranceway to the lung. I don't know what kind of a creature it was. All right, but they all have the same type of attachment at the bottom. Right there. That's the attachment. That is that attachment right there. If you can see that, I hope you can. Now, I call that the spur lock. All right, I named it after somebody called Spur. Oh wait, that's my name. All right, there's the latch. And that keeps this thing from floating around in your body and getting ripped up and down. Because you get this thing banged all around, but it's got to be attached somewhere, and that's where it is, in here. Now, in addition, there's little tiny holes in the bottom of these latches that allow the fluids to pass through. I believe these are the 2 little holes at the bottom that send the fluids from this organ. Normally it's going to coat an organ or muscle or whatever. This is coating muscle, but it's latched in, and I have a shot showing this actually latching in and anatomically. Here it is right here. You see that? That's the latch. Now you turn it like this, and that's that latch right here. Here it is right here. And remember I told you they got that little tiny spots in the bottom? I believe this is where those spots are coming through here to bring the tissue here. Now, the only reason they took a picture of this is because there's a tear here. So this lung, or whatever it was, let's say it was a lung. And here's that little latch. And this lung was laying here, and the guy got bam! And it ripped that latch right here. This is supposed to keep you, go back to where you're supposed to be. But it got whacked so hard that it ripped it. So I use a lot of pictures from injuries to show, reality, what's actually happening in these rocks. Because these rocks were alive at one time. All right, and the thing that freaks all of these academics out is because it points to God and our ancient history of giants. And this, my friends, is a hair follicle. I know you're going to say this is absolutely insane, and it is absolutely insane. That means it should be looked into, not just hide and run. And that's why I want to see Yale's president removed for allowing this to happen. And this goes on for many years. This was back in 2012. It's actually 10 years at least now that I've been working, trying to get Yale to pay attention. And once they turned me off, not a single one would listen to me, because they knew where I were and they knew what I was talking about. They didn't want to get involved because they get fired. So they just turned me and say, go talk to Yale. And of course, that didn't happen. That's why I'm doing this. I'm not doing it to be vindictive or anything. I'm just doing it because it's got to be done. Somebody's got to stop this. And this is what I'm trying to do, is stop it. All right? You can see what it is. And for them at Yale to tell me you got nothing but rocks with the DNA, the CAT scans, all of the tests, the chemistry, and the microscopy, I did all that stuff. They can say whatever they want to say, but I did it. All right, and this is what's in these all these little balls, and they're all over the earth. And they support my Mudfossil theory that everything is biology. And this just blew them off of their seats. They couldn't take this. And that is not what an academic should do. They should investigate the things that can't be dismissed, or can be dismissed only by factually dismissing it. I present factual information. I am a material scientist. I do material work. I show something to support my evidence. I had CAT scans done. This is of a fingertip, and I have the fingertip here, and you see from the back of it. This is 3D, where they're inside, and you can't see much, but you can see the outline of the bone. All right. If you know, that's just barely that. But everything else is transitioned. That's why Yale claims everything was soft body. They just don't understand the process. Now, the 2D is very, very illustrative. All right? And I had this done by Jesse Garant and Associates, the best people in the world. And we had 7 CAT scans done by them. And they were absolutely fabulous. They have 2D and 3D. This is the 2D. 2D means you get all of the surface, everything. And you can see very easily the tendon, blood supply, bone, tissue. And that's exactly what it is. And then they also did the 2D of the fingernail section. Somewhere, here it is right here. And this was, the fingernail is right here. You never see that without having this kind of a quality job done. And Jesse Garant Associates, absolutely fabulous. Best ever in the world. As far as I know, I believe that's a factual statement. They are absolutely fabulous. And the nicest people you ever want to work with, Jesse Garant and Associates. Now, and they did 7 CAT scans for us. Now, we had a CAT scan done at the University of Texas in Austin on this head. Now, listen to this. This, I'm telling you, this is because of Yale again. I said to Yale, I said, we have a perfectly preserved human head. And they said, no, it's impossible, it can't happen, da, 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 da. I said, yes, it is. And I said, how can we prove it to you? And they said, well, you can't. There's no way you could prove it. I said, well, what if we had CAT scans and DNA or whatever? And they said, well, you'd have to have this, you'd have to have that. And I said, well, what would you have to have? Well, you got to have a CAT scan. I said, well, where would we do that? I mean, what would you accept? Because they said, well, you can't just have it done anywhere. I said, well, where do you have yours done? And they said, University of Texas in Austin. So Jim Burchell and Arlie Caudle, who owned this head, and they were charged a ton of money, I believe. And I said, I could stand behind this, Jim. I'm telling you right now, there's no question this was alive. And I showed all of the, look at this. Just think about how neglectful they are with the details. You see that right there? That's blood. You see that on the side of his nose? That's blood. There's, oh, that's just an iron oxide. Well, what do you think blood is? It's made out of iron, red iron, blood. Somebody stepped on his nose or smashed his nose or whatever, and the flesh has been moved away from the cartilage. Nobody carves something like that. Now, what about their other ferrous oxides? Well, ferrous oxides are blood. Now, why are they oxides? Well, because you breathe, and so when you breathe, you add oxygen and it turns red, and when you use that oxygen up, it turns black. Wow, we have exactly that. Also, this is a cap. You can slide a playing card up under there. So here's what happened. So I said, what if we go down and get this thing done down in Texas, the University of Austin? Would you accept that? And they said, well, yes. Basically, they said that. I said, okay. So they did that, and they had it scanned. And I'm telling you right now, it turned into the worst nightmare you ever could imagine. The CAT scan, first of all, they wouldn't do it. They almost refused. I said, no, you're going to have to do this. Otherwise, you're just frauds. And it started to become very, very, very serious between us. And it ended up with police and lawyers because they refused to do anything. They eventually did do a CAT scan, and it looked like just absolutely nothing, nowhere near like Jesse Garant. And I don't know whether they're just incompetent or they just couldn't do it right. And there was only one little picture that I recall. I can't remember, but it was absolutely horrendous. And I felt terrible because I had led Jim to believe that we could get this thing approved, but that nobody would work with us, none at all. And this goes back to about 2014 or 2015, right in that area. It was before they wrote their books or their paper about this. So this really upset me. And I'm sure it upset Jim and Arlie because they, this was originally shown on TV. And that's how I got involved. Scott Walter, who was supposed to be an archaeologist, and he looked at this. It was less than 1 minute. It's carved, 100% certainty. No reason to look any further. It's done. Ferrous oxides, they're everywhere. Yeah, because there's blood everywhere. So, and then he just dismissed it. He never even looked. There no details. Now, if I was there, I would have said, wait a minute, Jim, or wait a minute, Scott. And I did. I contacted him. We went back and forth several times. And he said, I am the expert. Don't contact me again. So it's just, once they're in charge, they're in charge. All right, as I told you, this is a hair follicle, which it is. That right there is where the erector pili muscle attaches. All right, you can pull in and make your hair stand up on end. Now, that right there, of course, is where the hair shaft comes up straight through. Now, this is a sebaceous gland. Basically, it oils the hair. You see it right there? That's the sebaceous gland. That's this. So you got your sebaceous here, you got your pili erector muscle attachment here, you got your root ball right down here, and then these two little dots are where the vein and the artery attach at the bottom to service it for nutrition. And that is much larger than your average hair follicle. So just pull one out and look against that. You're going to see the creatures I'm talking about were so absolutely incredibly enormous that it's very hard for the human mind to be able to accept this. But if you are here for truth and honesty, then you have to open your mind up to examine this. Now, I tried using every comfortable way of presenting this. They call it the Rogerian argument, believe it or not. My name's Roger Spur, and this is the Rogerian argument, which means I understand how this is going to affect you. This is not going to be good for them, for all the things they've been saying, which are, they're just not correct. But that's okay. People make incorrect conclusions based on the available information. But if you turn away from the available information, then your conclusion is just speculation and opinion and has no meaning in science whatsoever. Science is the examination of things. And science isn't knowing everything. Science has nothing to do with knowing everything. Science is the examination of available evidence and bringing it to a conclusion. All right, and then if that conclusion's wrong, you just go to a new conclusion. But it is wrong what they have been saying about virtually everything. Geology is 100% wrong, and the history of all these things 540 million years ago, that's not right. These weren't soft-bodied creatures. These were normal creatures just like us. Well, they were giants, and just like Lydia said, there's nothing that exists today. They were just bizarre. But they did have bones like us. They had feet-ish things. You know, they had lungs. It's just that lung looks just like that. And the stuff I presented, even the giants, all three of them, this lung was human, and the giants were human too. All right, that fingertip came back with human DNA results. I sent this extractions. I did it very carefully. They said it was dense and excellent quality. I took it right out of the arteries, and I showed you get blood anywhere out of stone. Blood is just saturated in the stones. I have some that just leak right out of it. So I think I made my case, and I think it's time for Yale's president to resign, and I think it's time for them to donate at least $150 million to us to start writing new books. I've been trying to do this. I have a friend that's been writing books, and he's been writing my research, and it's a research about everything that's been neglected and wrong, and stuff that needs to be talked about: giants, myth, history, religion, introduction to mud fossils and the true geology, aether particles, electron flood theory. This is all new stuff, which we have to start a new school. These schools are destroying people's minds. It's called menticide. They are being brainwashed to do what they're told to do or face the consequences. Okay, my friends, you've seen a whole lot of evidence here. Now, I made the statement that sometimes a taste of bone remains, and that is the bone head. Now, I have it in the microscope, and that's a telescoping microscope, so that's the best thing to get if you want to look at mud fossils. Now, here it is up in here. Now, I have to turn the lights off. Hold on. All right, that's that bone I just showed you, and that is the last remaining bone. It gets invaded. You see how it's changing all this kind of crazy-looking stuff? That's what's called igneous rock. It's all kinds of different things, but it's from the body chemistry. Now, that has not quite gotten to the invasion stage yet, so there's a bone within a mud fossil. They had bones. They all had bones. They had teeth. They had all those things. But the specific conditions of this impact with Venus created the hot water floods. This is what the key is. That's what created the invasion. And with all this aluminum silicates, it protected, and the invasion continued though. And then it was a substitution of whatever the biological stuff was turned into minerals. It's biomineralizers came in, and primarily it's transition metals and the silicates. Okay, so I published my paper in 2015, and actually my book shows a publication date of February 2016. And this was mud fossils, about my discovery of the mud fossils, and about Velikovsky's terrible, terrible treatment by academia, and mines in collision. Now, Velikovsky wrote Worlds in Collision about the event of Venus causing this catastrophe on Earth, which did create all these mud fossils. Now, he was destroyed, totally, completely destroyed. His whole life was ruined by academia. He kept writing books, but he was just never accepted anymore. And he was a good friend of Einstein. He was no fool. He went to every culture on Earth and collected all this information. Totally rejected by academia. They destroyed him. Carl Sagan was absolutely the worst. He savaged him. Now, I put this book out in 2016 because I was very, very upset. And I showed this head, which was a nightmare with Yale, and I just told you about that, and the University of Texas, Austin, absolutely unbelievable. And I put it out just for 99 cents. I think I had to put something on it for some price. I wanted to do all for free, but anyway, when I first put it out, they just slammed me with all kinds of nasty, absolutely destroyed everything I did, and but I just left it up here. So anyway, it's up here on Amazon for 99 cents. It's a good buy. It's a good read. Now, I'm going to leave it at that for today, but I think in light of what I have presented, I'd like your comments on what you think we should do about Yale. And is this kind of stuff permitted there? Is that the way they do business there? It seems like it is to me. And I don't think this varies much from any of them. Because once you're in a peer review situation, it means that everybody else has to say what you say, or you are going to get bounced right out of there. So to me, I see it as racketeering. And when they will not do their jobs to help their students become more knowledgeable, that's fiduciary failure to the students, because they go there to learn to become better in life and more prosperous. And right now they are going to be seen as they went to clown schools, absolute clown schools, where you just learn to repeat what you're told to say, or you're destroyed. And Yale, even in their physics, Professor Shankar comes out in a quantum. I took the quantum physics there at Yale through online courses there, and the first thing he comes out and he says, nobody understands physics, so just say what I say and you're going to be all right. I'm serious. You look it up. Quantum physics at Yale. And, well, as a matter of fact, I'll show you, just because I like to prove what I say. Otherwise, I won't say it. But after that, I'm going to close it up. All right, like I say, I like to support what I say. Now, this is Professor Shankar, and this was quantum mechanics, and this is they put their courses online. You can go and watch what he has to say. Now, here's what he's saying. Here goes. And again, it's Yale courses.
So this is a very exciting day for me, because today we're going to start quantum mechanics, and that's all we'll do till the end of the term.
Election turn off.
Now, I got bad news and good news. The bad news is that it's a subject that's kind of hard to follow intuitively, and the good news is that nobody can follow it intuitively. Richard Feynman, one of the big figures in physics, used to say no one understands quantum mechanics. So in some sense the pressure is off for you guys, because I don't get it and you don't get it and Feynman doesn't get it. The point is, here's my goal. Right now, I am the only one who doesn't understand quantum mechanics. In about 7 days, all of you will be unable to understand quantum mechanics. Then you can go back and spread your ignorance everywhere else. That's the only legacy a teacher can want. So,
you know, the crazy thing is, he's the only honest one I've seen at Yale. And he's telling them exactly, we don't know what we're doing. So just do what I tell you to do, and you'll get away with it, and you'll go out there and everybody will think you're smart. You went to Yale. I'm telling you right now, leave me some comments. What do you think? What do you think about this? I don't think it's good. That's just my opinion, but I would like to see a Yale's president be replaced with somebody that wants to do actual academic research and searching for answers, not just saying you have to say what we tell you to say and don't come here with any questions. That's just a terrible attitude. And Derek Briggs, I mean, he knew what he was doing when he plagiarized my work, as far as I'm concerned. It's hard to miss. Maybe I'm wrong. I'd like to have somebody explain to me why I am wrong. Anyway, I love you all, and I'm hoping we can get this academic issue straightened out and this peer review situation resolved, and make things more open-minded. And I'm going to tell you right now, it's going to lead to God. That's what scares them. That's what scares them. You're not allowed to speak about that kind of stuff in there. So anyway, we've got a lot of thinking to do and a lot of changes to be made. All right, I love you all. Thanks. Bye.